This video gets us through lessons 4 and 5 on Unit 1. It's going to cover conflict and cooperation and settlement patterns. So here are our goals, our objectives. Here is some of the vocabulary that is used in this lesson. We've got apartheid and the demilitarized zone. Apartheid was that division between races in South Africa. Demilitarized zone is an area between two different groups or two different countries that is where no military activity exists. This may look familiar to you. This is between North and South Korea, and President Trump and the leader of North Korea actually met here a few weeks ago, and there was lots of media coverage there. Boundaries can cause both conflicts and cooperation. We have two different types of boundaries. We have physical boundaries, things like mountains and water, rivers, and then we have political boundaries, the country borders. Again, physical boundaries, rivers, oceans, mountains, deserts, those are all physical boundaries. And political boundaries are these invisible boundaries that are created by people. Some of the different types of political boundaries that you may be used to, your country boundaries, those country borders, states, breaking it down a little more, the county that you live in, the school district, the city. Political boundaries are very real and they determine how we live. So these political boundaries help set up our government. They help the economic system that we live in. And political boundaries can definitely lead to conflict. A lot of times, and we'll especially look at this when we look at Africa and what happened after the colonial period in Africa, it doesn't necessarily reflect the cultural composition of the nation. And the lesson goes into two different areas mainly. The first one is the Basque region in Spain. The people in the Basque region of Spain speak a different language than the rest of Spain. They have a different type of culture. They have different traditions, different, not necessarily holidays that they celebrate, but it's very different from the rest of Spain. The other example that they give us in the lesson are the Kurdish people, and the Kurdish people are in areas like Iraq, Iran, Turkey, and they're very different from those other areas as well. And a lot of times that will lead to conflict. It can also lead to movements to perhaps become independent. We've seen this in the Basque region. We've also seen this in Canada, in Quebec. Quebec is the French-speaking province in Canada, and there have been several times where they have tried to become independent from the rest of Canada. A more current issue is what's going on between Hong Kong and China right now. Hong Kong was traditionally a very independent country. For a long time, they were actually part of the British Empire. They were a British Commonwealth. And in 1999, control of Hong Kong went back to China, and the agreement was that China was going to allow them to continue to have their independence and rule themselves. And there's a lot of conflict going on between Hong Kong and China right now, because China is kind of going back on some of that promise to let them have their independence. They're actually going in and it's a mess right now. We'll get into it though. Do political boundaries change? Of course they do. This is a map of the Soviet Union, and now all of these different countries are independent countries. Places like Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Ukraine is up here, all of the stans, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, These are all now independent countries, and at one point they were all part of the Soviet Union. Here are some even further back historical examples. The Roman Empire controlled most of Europe and the northern part of Africa, and today Rome is just a city in Italy. The Mongolian Empire, you can see how much territory they controlled, and now this area right here is all that is Mongolia. What about cooperation? So the main reason that people tend to cooperate with each other has to do with money. So we'll come back to these first two examples in just a minute. These two down here are definitely have to do with money. This first one is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, and this one is the European Union. And both of these definitely developed out of for economic reasons. They're able to compete better in world trade by gathering together than they are independently. So look at the European Union, for example. A little country like Belgium does not have quite the buying power as the United States. But now that Belgium is part of the European Union, they have a little better, it's a little more balanced as far as trade, and having a little more power. These first two are set up for different reasons. The League of Nations was set up just after World War I. It eventually becomes the United Nations. And the United Nations is more of a peacekeeping organization than it is a monetary organization. So they're trying to keep the world at peace with each other. They look at those types of aspects more than money. They're kind of the police of the earth. There are our review, and now going into settlement and movement. Here are our objectives. Here is the vocabulary. We're only going to look at a couple of these vocabulary terms. One of them is sustainable development. A quick review of push and pull factors. Remember, those push factors push you out of an area. Those pull factors pull you into an area. What are some of the reasons that people settle where they do? They're looking for resources. They're looking for soil. They're looking for land and water. They're looking for access to water and having transportation. So these are the main reasons when you're looking at a settlement. Maybe one of these is the reason that people ended up in that place. Sustainable development. All this means is if you are developing an area and you want to have that area remain for generations to come, you're looking at sustainable development. So you're looking at a way to use resources that's not going to use them all up and not have anything there for future generations. That's what we have for settlement and for conflict and cooperation.